before you put on a uniform, J-Rock, and go play quarterback. It's the same thing.
Absolutely. Mike Pettin said that. It doesn't matter. He said absolutely. He said not a single excuse. Manziel did not play good at all, but, Brian Sipe probably couldn't have came out the way we played last week and won. He's absolutely 150% right about that part of it. As we said, Browns have to go out there and play this game. There's nothing they can do about it. What do you do to make things... What can they do here? What do you expect to see in the game plan to make things easier? I would say the natural instinct is, well, they're going to run the ball. Well, they tried to do that here this week. Now, will Carolina be a little less difficult to run against? Perhaps. I'm not sure. But, if you can't get that going, I don't know. You could say bootlegs, but Cincinnati already showed the game plan on that. You seal off the left side, you make him move everything to the right. You control him, and he can't do anything against you. And so I think, if nothing else, then the game plan's out there. I expect Carolina to just piggyback off of the type of defensive game plan that Cincinnati put out there. So I expect Manziel to face exactly the same type of attack that he faced last week. So I think it's an easy test for his intellectual level as a quarterback, because I think you're going to see the same defensive attack. Can you switch it up? Can you do anything differently this week with it?
Yeah, that's going to be a big question, is how long can he stay on his feet and not get hurt and keep moving around back there. Obviously, he met his match with Cincinnati, and teams took a look at that, and every team in the NFL has that film now. And again, you're talking about 13 games that it took, and he didn't even start most of them, and it only took 13 games for him to be caught up to in the NFL. Even the best college quarterback, there's enough film on him within 2 years for teams to begin to defensively scheme against these offenses. So, it's not even Johnny's fault. It's just the way it is these days in the league.
Right, and then you throw in that's what I mean. Besides the whole he's ill-equipped for any of this, is that even if he was equipped, he was set. I'm telling you, I mentioned it earlier in the show. Every single guest that talked about last week, Manziel, at some point in their segment used the phrase "set up to fail." That wasn't a coincidence that every single person independently used that same phrase, because it's absolutely true, man. But see, that phrase can be used two different ways. Set up to fail doesn't mean intentionally set up to fail. It means there was absolutely no way for him to succeed. And I'm telling you, at the end of the day, the one person that knew all of this is the head coach of the Cleveland Browns. It's the reason why he did what he did. It's the reason why he waited. All of that. Mike Pettin knew all of this. And I was telling somebody last night, my thoughts was, Jimmy Haslam doesn't go to every practice, doesn't go to anything. He gets his reports from his soldiers. He gets his, hey, how's things? Oh, yeah, Johnny's developing just well. Meanwhile, when Pettin and Farmer sit down at night and they smoke their stogie and they go have some steaks over at Pier 6 or something like that, they look at each other and they go, can you believe how rudimentary this guy is? Can you believe this is the level? Not that we can't build him up, but wow, look at where we're starting from. But Jimmy doesn't know that. Jimmy, well, let's see what the kid's got. Meanwhile, they're looking at each other going, Jimmy don't want to see what we see every day. So I truly believe that Mike Pettin knew. Maybe he hoped the spark or whatever, but I don't think he bought a word of that all along, and I still laugh. I still laugh at he's been wrecking our defense every week. Boy, he's a nightmare to defend in practice. If that's the case, then that defense is way worse than you people think it is, man. Or perhaps it's a bunch of veterans that don't feel like chasing the kid around in practice because, anyways. But so what do they do? What would you do offensively if you're Kyle Shanahan this week to give Manziel a chance to be successful? You got to think you're going to, I don't know. You're going to stick with a lot of the play action. You've got to vary up the play call. To me, it seemed but then again, it's easy for us to say vary up the play call. It seemed very rudimentary, but perhaps that's the level it has to be at. That's a question to ask too. Can it not get can you not get any more sophisticated with it right now? Because we were having trouble getting guys in the right spot of the line as it was last week.
Yeah, and that's going to be the problem unless they bootleg a little more in the play action and they try some pitch outs and some options, which certainly Johnny can run. You know, that's the only way they're going to keep Carolina's defense off balance is by doing something else every other play.
You know, it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, there's 2 more of these to go, and I really hope. Hey, man, I hope that the Browns. I don't know what I hope about Manziel, but I do hope the Browns show up to play ball. I absolutely hope that the team does show up. But I just, man, if they didn't come up for the last home game, if they didn't come up for that, I just don't see on the road in Carolina and then Baltimore. I see it as throwaways at the end of the season. But we'll have to see about that. You know, I'll tell you what, we mentioned talking about playoffs and obviously not happening for the Browns, but Carolina, one of those teams that will be fighting for that here, is they're 5-8-1, half a game behind New Orleans. New Orleans is in the driver's seat there in the division there, but Carolina needs to win this game. But you look around, nearly every division, there's a game separating first and second place. This is all coming down to it in the NFC. You've got Dallas and Philly, a game apart there at the top there in the East. You've got the North. You've got a tie with Green Bay and Detroit right there. You've got, we just mentioned the South. And then over in the West, you've got Arizona and Seattle there. And Arizona already clinched their ticket there. The other teams looking to see where they finish in positioning. But then you flip it over to the AFC, my friend, and it's just the wild, wild west out here with 2 weeks left to be played. Now you've got 3 divisions clinched. Patriots, Colts, Broncos, all took care of their business here as to be expected. You've got the North wide open for play because Cleveland's 2 games back, but Cincinnati, Pittsburgh, Baltimore, all right there within a half game of each other, effectively a 3-way tie at the top of the AFC North for those 2 teams, or for those 3 teams over the last 2 weeks. Then over there in the, as I said, in the South, Indianapolis has took care of business. Denver, you've got all of these teams bunched up now for wild cards in that 9, 8, 7. I'll tell you, for all our talk about a wild card not coming out of the North, perhaps that was wrong, because if you look at things here, I've got to think that the North has the lead heading into the last 2 weeks of the season. I've got to think that the North has the lead on getting one of those wild card teams because all 3 teams already have 9 victories.
It's still possible, but you know, it's definitely still possible. But the whole idea here is that everybody's going to knock each other off these last 2 weeks, and that's what's going to happen.
Well, I mean, because you've got, as I said, you got 3 teams here. You got Kansas City, San Diego, Buffalo. They're all sitting at 8 wins. Just below that, you've, of course, got Miami, Houston right below them at 7-7. They're where the Browns are, though. For all intents and purposes, for any of those 7-7 teams to get a wild card, they'd have to win out. The other teams would have to lose out. It's just, that's not happening. So you can narrow your focus down to Kansas City, San Diego, the 3 teams in the North, whichever team doesn't win the division there, and Buffalo. Those teams will be fighting it out here over the last 2 weeks. I've got to say, I think the North has a nose ahead in the race here. I think they're the favorite to end up with a second team in there for the wild card, man, because at least one of those teams that doesn't win the division is going to finish with 10 wins, and I think at best, of the other 3 teams at 8 wins, I can only see 1 or 2 of them that finishes with 10 as well. So I think the North has got a bit of a nose in the lead there to end up with that wild card.
Yeah, as long as Buffalo doesn't win out, and you know, if they were to win out and finish up, they'd have a couple of the tiebreakers. So it's very possible that it could still be a team in the North, or it could be Buffalo. And,
absolutely.
And we'll have to see what happens. A lot's going to happen. A lot's going to happen this Sunday to decide that.
Yeah, and Vashon in the chat room says in the North, all the teams own the tiebreakers in the wild card over the other team. So I don't know. I'll know. I'm not getting into it 2 weeks out after this week, I'll memorize all of if this team, that team, this team, but I'm not doing it with 2 weeks out. But yeah, man, a lot of parity, a lot of playoff races here. This is what the NFL lives for, man. And it's going to be a fun last couple of weeks to the regular season here before we hit the playoffs. And then my favorite weekend of the football season, which is, of course, wild card weekend. Love it. But still a couple of very important weeks to go for some of these teams, man.
Yeah, and again, we'll be able to discuss it better next week. But we've been talking about Pete Rozelle's parody for the past couple of weeks now, J-Rock, you and I, and how this season, obviously the league is just bending over backwards with joy. They're doing somersaults into Goodell's, Olympic-sized swimming pool over this. They're loving every minute of it.
Let me ask you something here, man. Your Cardinals, real quick, before we go, man. Obviously, the situation at first off, hats off, of course, to Bruce Arians, period, for the job that he does. But here the Cardinals sit. They're 11-3 with all of the quarterbacks going down one after another. And here now, same situation for them, man. I think it says something for them to still be where they are here and to still be sitting strong here with all of those issues at quarterback.
Oh, absolutely. And again, like you said, give credit to BA, Bruce Arians, what a great job he's done and he continues to do. And, he said something yesterday during the press conference yesterday. He said, hey, if everybody would write us a check who said we were done this year, he said, I'd be a multimillionaire. I wouldn't keep this job. So
Kerwin Williams stepped up too there at the running back position as well, man. But Arizona, a couple of challenges here to end the season for them here. It doesn't get any easier. They've got Seattle, they've got San Francisco, and hey, man, wheels are falling off there with San Francisco. But I'm sure that if nothing else, they're looking to negatively impact a couple of teams' season in their last two games, even though the playoffs not an option for them either here. So tough one there. But yeah, like you said, man, and I'll go back to it. Everybody likes to throw out there, here's what I said 2 years ago. Arians was my guy for the Browns. When they did the whole Chud coaching search, Arians was my guy from day one. And the only argument that I really got from most Browns fans were like, yeah, the ones that didn't like it were of course, the ones that immediately, pass judgment on anything. They're the guy that if a guy's undrafted, they'll go, oh, yeah, he's nobody. He's nothing. Are you serious? He just ran for 2,000 yards. Well, I've never heard of him. That's because you only know who the star players are. Like, those fans do. That's the one frustrating fan base is they only know, like, the names of the players that you hear on SportsCenter and stuff. They think if a guy wasn't drafted in the first round that he's nobody important and he's just a dime a dozen replaceable player. And you're like, do you even watch the games? But anyways, so the only real people that had problems with Arians at that point was people that say, oh yeah, let's get another former coordinator. Well, if the Browns thought he deserved the job, well, let's not qualify anything on how smart the previous Browns front offices have been, because they were dumb enough to let him go once, and his age. That was the one thing that some people held against him, and I thought wrongly so. I said, hey man, to me, that doesn't say anything. Look at a guy like Coughlin. There's a lot of guys that get up there in years, they can still coach the hell out of a football team. But I get mad because to me, that's the one the Browns let get away. I think deep down, Arians wanted to come back to Cleveland. He would have liked the opportunity with some of the, even I think it was with Whedon and the chance to work with him and whatever. But, because people still thought there was a future with Brandon Whedon. But anyways, Arians was where the Browns front office screwed up, because I really wanted them to hire him. Instead, we see what he's gone and done.
Yeah, I don't think they wanted to give him the control. I think if he came back, he would have wanted 100% control over everything. And they wanted, Haslam wanted a general manager in place.
Yeah. Yeah,
I know, and I agree with you. You know what? Let me tell you something here. The GM here just sits back and lets him do his job. Keim is a good guy, but he's not overbearing, and he doesn't tell the coach how to run his team. And that's been the formula to success here.
Yep, and that was, I mean, as we know, Banner, you laughed, but yeah, that was him, and that was his call, and that was the biggest thing against that, and that's why we got Chud the Bud, and one season of him, and then now here we move on, and I'm happy with. I like Mike Pettin, so I can't go crazy because it took 2 years, but we ended up getting a coach that I like here, at least with what he's done so far. So, but anyways, Bruce Arians, yeah, I don't think he gets enough credit for what he's done. I just wanted to mention that because I know you're an Arizona guy there, and Cardinals got to make a little push here. But hats off.